Things have frozen for everyone, right?
Okay. Yeah, I think actually it's just Jen that's frozen. But it does look like we're on air. So it's a little bit questionable what is being recorded right now. But hello, everybody. Welcome to the Backdrop weekly meeting for August 16th, 2018. Although we lost Jen, hopefully she'll be back to run things here shortly. Well, in the meantime, I'll start going through the agenda that we have. Sorry, we're starting a bit late. We had a really excellent conversation about documenting some authorities and teams regarding different groups, and we might recap that here in a minute. But first of all, contributed projects. Hey, oh good, Jen, you're back.
Apparently there's no Wi-Fi in this room.
Yeah, go ahead and start on contributed projects.
All right. So under contributed projects, we have two new ones. Highlight.js has integration with our rich text editor, and GDPR cookies, which is a module that sets up your compliance for European visitors, have both been ported in the last week. So thank you to all of our contributing maintainers who made those happen. In addition to new projects, there are a bunch of fantastic new ideas emerging in the contrib issue queue. And so I wanted to kind of highlight a few of those because I think that anyone who's not watching the contrib issue queue probably should take a look at these. They're ones that I think we could use some feedback on. So the first one is about licensing policies that is recommending that we follow WordPress's contrib licensing, which is GPL2 and GPL3. So there's an issue number 294 in the contrib queue about that. And also, similar to that, there was recommendation to add like licensing information, I think, into the README files so that GitHub would identify a project as being under a certain license. So if you're looking for something that's GPL licensed, Backdrop and the new contrib projects too would come up with that license. So that's just something to think about too. If we're going to set standards for our licensing, we should probably also have people document what that is. Kevin, I'm not sure if you're still here, but I think that was your idea, opening that issue.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to, with the Backdrop project itself, you don't have to put the license text in there. You can define the license through the GitHub UI. But yeah, right now there is no license for it. So if you search for PHP CMS projects that are GPL licensed, you don't find GitHub, you find Grav and October and some of these other projects. So just to, there are people that use the license-based searches. So you want your project to show up there.
Did you say it's possible to just edit the repository settings and set the license that way?
Yeah. In each project repo, you can select a license. So GitHub's trying to auto-detect it based on parsing the license TXT file, but it's expecting those to be at the root level. Mm-hmm. But what you can't do is put both the GPL2 and GPL3 license in there. You have to pick one as what shows up in that little icon tab interface.
I don't see a setting for actually doing that. I think that
I don't either.
I know that when you create a new repository, it provides the select list, but then all that does is pre-populate the repository with the license file.
Really?
I don't think it actually saves it as a setting anywhere.
All right, I'll take a look at that.
But anyway, yeah, it's a good point that we should probably move the license back up to the root. Right now it's under the core directory, just to make it so that GitHub can identify our license.
But maybe similarly for contrib projects, we should specify what license is allowed, and maybe having that be different from core would be fine.
Backdrop contrib does properly identify all of our projects, or it should identify all of our projects as GPL2 because that's part of our porting that you include the license.txt file in all contrib modules. It actually looks like I'm saying it's not consistent, but most of them have it. It's supposed to be a requirement of any contrib module that you include the license.txt file. And it looks like that's been haphazardly implemented. Although it is there on most of them. I'm seeing like 9 out of 10 probably.
Part of that was the question as to whether or not GPL3 is allowed for backdrops contrib. And so in that issue, I talked about the weird line Drupal's always tried to walk with that, having its cake and eating it too. And it's just unclear whether or not that's the way Backdrop wants to be structured with contrib, not with the core project, or whether it's okay to follow WordPress's example and allow individual contrib projects to use GPL licenses, and that include Apache 2 or GPL3 only licensed libraries.
Yep, that is not clear. Right now, our policy is that you include the GPL2 in your repository, but you're absolutely right that we have the flexibility, or we could offer the flexibility of allowing contrib authors to say that something is GPL3 without any problem. Sorry about the dog. So yeah, I think we should just continue discussing this in this issue that you opened, Kevin. It's a really helpful thing to have open. It's issue 294, and I like that this one is specifically focused on contrib policies, which we haven't discussed before. I know that we had a long discussion over core and the way that we should treat core, and for now we're basically saying, that the end result of that one was we're going to leave it as being GPL2, with the option that you can upgrade to GPL3 when you distribute it, because that is your right under the GPL2 anyway. So defining whether or not contrib projects can be GPL3, officially, just like from the outset, without saying they're GPL2, because you have to be GPL3 in order to include an Apache library, is useful. So let's continue chatting back and forth on that one. I don't think that we should use up the meeting to discuss licensing, but let's continue on that issue.
So other suggestions in the queue for contrib are changing our backdrop contrib agreement to use a service. And this is something that we looked at back in the beginning and decided not to do for a bunch of various reasons. It might be good to document those here and see if they all still apply. So just there are standard ways in GitHub to have people agree to various licenses now that maybe aren't what they were 4 years ago when we first looked at it. So it might be good to re-review that. That issue is number 285 in the contrib group. There's also a recommendation to include a contributing.md file for every contrib project so that we can leverage more of GitHub's built-in tools around managing contributors. That might be something that would be really familiar to people on GitHub and helpful to people who are new to Backdrop. There's also a recommendation to add perhaps a paragraph of text to every project's README file that mentions how security issues should be reported. So if all security issues need to go to the Backdrop security queue that's private, we should probably put a link to that in every contrib project so that anyone who has a contrib project and has identified an issue also has the information about how to report that issue safely. And then there's also an issue here to try and better leverage GitHub security scans by including a JSON file that references a version of a particular library if you're going to be bundling a library with your module. That way, if that library has a known security problem, the module will get flagged as needing an update. So I think all of these are great ideas. I would love to have feedback from other people on which ones we should move on right away and which ones might need further thought or discussion. These are all in the contrib queue. If you don't have access to, I think everyone should have access to comment, but if you need additional access, feel free to ask and get it.
Yeah, the security one's definitely a low priority because GitHub is not scanning PHP yet. So that's just based on what's happened with JavaScript, Python, and Ruby. So that one's just something to start thinking about now.
Okay. So I think it's a good idea. All right. That is the end of updates for contributed projects this week. It does look like there's a lot of activity in the GitHub contrib queue with people who are requesting modules and people who are working on modules and people who are talking about modules and themes. So I just want to say a quick thank you to all the people who are super involved in making contrib happen for backup. All right, websites. So starting with the translation site, it looks like, is Olaf here today? No, this might be an update from last week. But it says that there is a working test server, and I think this is Olaf is going to rebuild the configuration for localized.backtropcms.org. So we should thank Olaf and Robert for all of their work on getting the translation server going for people. And the forum site, it looks like it might be time to assign official forum moderators. So anyone who has time or interest in keeping an eye on questions coming up in the forum site, it might be good to have someone, spend an hour a week addressing those questions and making sure they have answers. That's the kind of thing that I find really rewarding to do. Like if you only have half an hour and you need something to do while you're changing context, visiting the forum site and seeing what people are up to is really interesting. But it is something that I think would be much better for new people if there was a dedicated team of like forum moderators. That might also be another thing we could put on our list of teams. People who can answer your questions or at least get people who know answers to your questions into the conversation would be good.
How about moderating spam as part of that?
Yeah, and monitoring spam. So we have a way that anyone can flag a comment or post as being spam, but we don't have an automatic unpublisher yet. So I think that could be something we could automate pretty easily. Like if 2 or 3 people mark the same comment as spam, then it automatically gets unpublished, or same thing with post. But it would also be good to have more moderators empowered to do more things on the site. All right, infrastructure-wise, I think this is what we just talked about right before the meeting. So let's see, to summarize, we need to document who can do what, and in some cases define points of contact, and this might not be people as points of contact so much as locations where you can find people depending on what the thing is that you're trying to do. So a page or series of pages on backtropcms.org that gives descriptions of the different queues, issue queues in particular, and working groups or teams, and what their responsibilities are. Also, it would be good to have a list of what servers and sites we're running and who has responsibility for managing what. And so if you are interested in working on someone and you need access to a sanitized database backup of the forum, who do you ask for that? Who knows where those are? Who can hook you up? So that would be really great too. I don't know if we need to have that discussion again, but there is an issue, number 467, for those of you who weren't here or weren't watching before we started the recording, where we are going to continue discussion about how to make that happen. That's issue number 467 in the backdrop cms.org queue. So just trying to figure out what are all the things that we don't have documented, how do we document them in a way that makes sense, is transparent, and is helpful to everybody who needs that information. Okay, moving on to backdrop the project. I'm going to turn over to Nate and mute myself.
Okay, all right, so product updates. We've got a boatload of things, progress on most fronts here. So first of all, let's talk about 1.10.2, which is the next bug fix release. We still have that same outstanding issue around the database credentials that's been bugging us since 1.9. 2904, still no progress on that front. Still has the workaround, but needs some fleshed out implementation there. I'm not going to recap that again this meeting. Also, kind of interesting, we are accumulating a lot of fixes in the 1.10 branch. Currently, there's about a dozen bug fixes that have been applied. There's two issues regarding JavaScript behaviors, issue 3210 and 3212, that were implemented a few weeks ago and got reviewed, and I've merged them this past week. And those fix this long-standing problem that users of Backdrop have probably noticed, that when they upload a file, sometimes there's two progress throbbers that show up, or sometimes multiple progress throbbers. The combination of either one of those or both of them combined solves that problem. So it's nice to have that regular kind of annoyance solved, and that could actually cause larger problems on a more complex Backdrop website. So anyway, that is to say, we're accumulating enough bugs in the 1.10 release that making a bug fix release would probably be advisable at this point. Like there's enough fixes in place that would be valuable to have those pushed out as a release. That's it for 10.2. There are, of course, a lot of outstanding issues, several of which need review, that are also in the 1.10.2 milestone that you can check out on GitHub. Is anybody here present, since we've got so many people, have any things that they'd like to call out for the bug fix release 1.10.2 as being something of interest, or something that they've been working on that they would like attention drawn to? No? Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about 1.11 then. 1.11, it's coming right up. Today is August 16th, and the release of 1.11 will be September 15th. So we now effectively have 1 month. It's actually 30 days until the release of 1.11. We have a bunch of issues that are in progress, though. Feature freeze will happen. It's usually the first of the month prior to release. We've mentioned last week, I think, that our tentative plan for feature freeze will actually be the end of September 2nd, which is Sunday night, essentially. So you'll have the weekend for all of our volunteers out there, the weekend to do last minute merging and feature review and get in all of the last minute functionality for the 1.11 release. So feature freeze normally on the first of the month, because that falls on a weekend, we're pushing it to the end of the weekend. So it'll be September 2nd will be the end of code freeze. So, the start of feature freeze. And then we'll use the remaining 2 weeks to work out any last bugs or issues, and then have the release on September 15th. So let's go through the list of functionality here. Contact module improvements. There's a big meta at issue 3023. There's about 6 issues that have been merged there, and 2 that are currently in progress. One of which has actually had a pull request for a while, but I don't think it was marked as needs review. 3190 adds a duplication of the permissions list to the contact module settings page. The contact module settings page, which only exists actually in 1.11, that was added in a previous pull request. OP in particular has been working to make it so that contact module has a lot more capabilities and it exposes more options. And that includes a new settings page to manage all of this functionality within contact module. So that functionality, the settings page, has been in place for a while now, and 3190 makes it so that there are permissions added to that settings page. Also, under that same meta 2145 is an issue that makes it so that when you turn on contact module, it would add a menu item automatically. The state of that one is that it needs work. I think the code review that was put in place a couple of weeks ago still hasn't had the changes addressed quite yet. And there's some other items underneath that meta as well, although those two are the ones that currently seem to be in progress. Next up is color module improvements, which there is a meta for at 1905, although that meta can get a little bit confusing at times. We have in the 1.11 release already made it so that the basis theme is now colorizable. So you can change the appearance of basis from its default blue to another color scheme. We do still need to make it so that we would like to include default color schemes out of the box for basis. That hasn't been completed yet. And a new color UI that provides a live preview is also in progress, and that one is at 3186. Joseph has been taking the lead on 3186 for the new color UI. I posted a code review just day before yesterday that code-wise, it looks fantastic, actually. I don't even think I had any complaints about the implementation at all. So code-wise, it's good to go. We also separated out that question of like what to do with the new external or new color picker library called Spectrum that we're just punting on that, not including Spectrum for Internet Explorer compatibility and making that a sub issue. If we decide to add support later, then we can do that just as a completely separate item. But there are a couple of functional problems with that pull request right now. The background, for some reason, always defaults to being black, which is not what it should default to being. It should default to being white. And the preview doesn't seem to work in Firefox. Aside from those two issues, more testing would be appreciated on that. There's a live sandbox with the latest code that you can try it all out on and provide feedback into that issue. Still really close. I think that that could be knocked out in one more iteration, barring any unforeseen problems. Next up is Node Preview, which is issue 3062. This issue, primarily Doc Wellman has been taking the lead on to make it so that the preview button comes back to the node form, and it makes it so that you can see a node on the front end of the site with all of the theming in place during preview mode. And the holdups in that issue have all been resolved. It seems like now we're just back to doing the nitty-gritty of polishing. Thanks Herb Jewell, Gregory, Olaf, and others who have all been doing an excellent amount of feedback there and making it so that there's been a lot of feedback loops that are happening with iterations on the implementation. So that one continues to move in towards completion. Still needs more review. Another code review would be appreciated. And then there's more feedback regarding the CSS and the appearance of things that is currently in progress right now. Thank you, everybody, for your extensive reviewing on that particular issue. I don't think I have more to say on that one. It's just, continuing along really pretty effectively at this point. Next up is core updates or automatic updates, and this is issue 2018. This is a meta that just covers like our overall goals for making it so that core can be updated automatically eventually. For 1.10 or 1.11, we're not trying to be so ambitious as to actually achieve automatic updates at this point, but we are trying to make it so that core itself can be updated via the user interface and potentially put in some groundwork for adding automatic updates at a point in the future. So there was some additional reviewing that happened this past week on 3105, which allows core to be updated via the user interface. I think still the status overall on that one is that the implementation looks good. More reviewing would be appreciated and more testing. If anybody has any bright ideas on how to add any kind of automated testing, that would be really helpful. But considering the complexity of core replacing itself, we don't have any tools that are suitable for testing that functionality, which means manual testing at this point is important to us. And automated testing, if we can figure out a way to make that happen, that would be a really nice improvement to making sure that functionality keeps working into the future. Let's see, other things. Package signing, issue 1992. John Franklin posted a really long synopsis on how OpenSSL could be used instead of Sodium for doing package signing. I think we're still kind of waiting to see the implementation on that, but it does look like what he's suggesting may end up being, I'm not quite sure if it's actually more complex, but it's more complicated for the implementation that we ourselves would have to maintain. And so there's a good chance that we will probably continue with the Sodium based signing implementation, but we'll see like if he comes back with more suggestions on the OpenSSL implementation. That is a possibility still. Lastly, issue 3208 is this topic of removing the authorized.php file, because the authorized.php file is kind of fundamentally incompatible with the concept of automatic updates. And just in general, we haven't evenly implemented authorized.php throughout Backdrop, and it doesn't seem that authorized.php has ever been a well-known mechanism that has been used, at least by those that have contributed to this particular issue. If you have or have not used authorized.php or have any experience using the user interface updates within Backdrop or Drupal, please chime in to issue 3208, where we're discussing the removal of authorized.php entirely. Conceptually, the way that this would actually look, though, wouldn't be an outright removal, but probably a deprecation of everything related to authorized.php, and then just removing our use of authorized.php from the mechanisms in Backdrop that currently use it, which right now includes the manual module installer and module updates. So we'd probably just remove the small if statements that say, if the file system is not writable, then redirect to authorized.php, and just say, if it's not writable, then throw a message, and then that would be it. And then we'd stop using authorized.php anywhere in core, and then remove it from Backdrop 2.0. Okay, that's it for the core updates update. And then we'll go through these last couple of issues that we've been pulling out during the agendas. Issue number 37, which adds the ability to tag modules in addition to adding categories. That one's still kind of spinning wheels, that there hasn't been any recent updates to issue number 37 regarding just making it so that modules can have tags in their .info files, and that those tags get used on the modules page. I think there was a little bit of discussion this week about making it so that we want to use those tags in other places, like in the module or in the project installer and on backdropcms.org itself, so that you can find modules by the tags that they have defined. But this is kind of the prerequisite work, is adding it to core itself, and then having a minor feature improvement just so that those tags are also utilized on the modules page. So still need some more work on that particular one. There's two implementations to choose from. A more recent one that kind of went a little bit too far in ambition, and an older one that was really close to being complete, but just didn't get polished up before 1.9 or before 1.10 was pushed out. Let's see. Okay, next up, let's see, one minor feature in the grand scheme of things, issue 2887, making it so that images automatically rotate based on their EXIF data when they're uploaded. This one is really, really close. It just needs some really minor work and test coverage. There's already similar tests in place for resizing images, so I think that we can base our tests off of that, and it will be very similar. But once we get test coverage added, that one should be complete. And issue 3134, also related to images, makes it so that you can keep saying rich text file upload. It's actually the image browser. That 3134 adds an image browser to the image dialog, making it so that you can reuse images that have previously been uploaded. We had both a code review and a re-roll this past week. Graham72, thank you again for your continued efforts there. This one needs some CSS and JavaScript work to tidy up some of the behaviors regarding the way that the dialog opens and displays itself. And it also needs another code review because I know that Graham has gone through and reworked the way the view is built out that displays the list of thumbnails. And so a little bit more code review there, and also some more front-end work is necessary to move that to completion. But that one also is coming along very, very nicely. And I think that we've got plenty of time to wrap that up. Let's see. That's it for the items that are on the agenda. Are there any other things that people would like to bring up or mention for the 1.11 release that they would like to call attention to? No? Okay. All right. Let's see. Next up in the agenda, Jeff, do you want to do an update on Backdrop for Good?
Sure. So we teamed up with Hack for Western Mass this past week, and we moved several of the issues forward, so that's great. And some of the team there is going to continue to work on some of the issues they picked up. So that's fantastic collaboration, and we're glad to move that forward. And we're looking forward to designs and starting on that front as well. If anybody's interested, check out the issue queue, and if you want to help out and work with some great Backdrop developers and people, click on that link in the agenda and see if anything is up your alley.
Excellent. Okay, and then now we just have general discussion. If there's anything else that you guys would like to bring up to discuss, or anything that we would like to schedule for next week's meeting, then now's the time.
Hey, how about that Badcamp thing that's coming up? What's happening with that and the summit?
Jen, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I was just checking the forum posts to see what people said. It looks like Tim added a comment. He said, last year there was 1 day of training and 1 day of summits. That's the same. We're doing the same thing this year. Should the summit be more advanced, or an opportunity for community members to talk about participation and contribution, or maybe both? I think contribution is a good topic. Like, we're definitely at a point now where we have enough people who might want to, figure out like this bug squad issue or something like that, where it might be good to do that when we're all in the same place and can hash out ideas. How could it be improved? Yeah, and so Tim, I don't know if you want to explain this a little bit more in your own words, but it looks like you're recommending that maybe we make the Backdrop Summit at Badcamp be a little bit more like a community summit. Might have been at DrupalCon or Drupal camps in the past. and talk a little bit more about like things we can do to foster the community rather than so much about the code, since we seem to be fairly good at code. And there might be other things that might be better used for our time when we're all in person and can talk about more complicated issues.
Well, I think that you kind of covered it. I feel like some of the community issues just benefit from discussion, and there might be enough people there, just a good chance face to face to just to talk about contribution, things that's going on in the community, and things like that. So yeah, I don't really have much to add to it. But I don't know if I'm recommending it as much as just throwing it out there as an option.
Yeah, it might be good to try and get a feel for who's going to be there. Obviously, Mike, Nate, and I are local, so it's a little easier for us to get there than some other people who might need to travel. But we are sort of balancing this, like, what is the point of the Backdrop Summit question, where it's like, is this something that's supposed to serve our community, or is this something that's supposed to grow our community?
Right.
Because if we have a whole bunch of people who are there to figure out what is Backdrop, like talking about like how we make contribution better isn't going to benefit them. They really need to like show me a showcase of sites running Backdrop, or tell me why this is going to save me money in the long run. And that's sort of different content than the kinds of things that our community needs. And I think one year, I don't know if it was last year, it might have been the year before, we did sort of both things. Like the morning was like this is Backdrop information for people who aren't already part of the community, and the afternoon was more, I think we called it a core developer summit, where we were trying to like solve some of the harder problems. And though I felt like both parts of the day were beneficial, I felt like the afternoon, it was much harder, just because it's like there were people in the room who are like, I don't understand why we're talking about this. So I don't know, like, I feel like if we have more people in the room who would benefit from that, it's going to be better. But if we're going to have more people, it's hard to know who's going to be there. And especially like, even if we get a list, how do we know, like, are you already using Backdrop or not? We could send out a survey. Maybe we should have content ready for both, like discussion topics. And then in the morning, we could be like, okay, so based on your questionnaires, it looks like this is who's in the room. And then we could do whatever.
I mean, maybe we could do like, just like an hour at most, like what is Backdrop first thing in the morning for people who really want to come and find out what it is. But then I think like the important part of the summit is just having us there and being able to discuss things and spend a day to like talk about where we're going with the project and stuff like that, and less just sort of like presenting to people who are just not involved. I mean, it's sort of a chance for us to get together and have a long discussion. So I'd like to focus on that.
Okay. I mean, I definitely think we can do our like mini presentation in the morning regardless, and we probably should, even for people who are familiar with Backdrop, just to see like what's changed in the last year. But yeah, I feel like one of the things that I thought went the best in the last 2 years was the showcase section, and having people who have adopted Backdrop talking about why and how and what it's doing for them. So I wouldn't want to lose that entirely.
I like that part. But
yeah.
just, I don't think we should regurgitate every single time, like, what is Backdrop? I mean, if we want to do that, we can have a session about what is Backdrop. That might be a more appropriate place to do it.
Yeah.
For people who haven't heard of us. But like, if someone's going to actually come to our summit, like, they should at least know what the project is.
Yeah. I'm just not sure that's like actually who's going to be there. But let's see what the website says. We might want to update our thing. If it's like, if you don't know what Backdrop is, don't come. Like, we can kind of make that more clear in the description of what it's, once we know what it's going to be about, right? What it's going to be about, and that will help. Let's see.
Do we want to propose any actual sessions for the session parts of it?
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Like, we could do, I'm not sure if I get into this, but basically kind of like a conference within a conference.
That's what higher ed used to do.
Right. Yeah, that we could actually even like say, hey, if you would like to submit a session proposal, and then actually make a schedule. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, it's over. I don't know. I was talking about a session actually for Badcamp itself, like.
Oh, okay.
A Badcamp session, because it's a conference. And that, you know, we don't have to tell people what Backdrop is on like our summit day. They could just come to a session about what Backdrop is and have a introduction for new people. I would say also, like, maybe the most important thing to talk about is maybe upgrading from Drupal 7. Have a session on how to upgrade a site from Drupal 7 to Backdrop, and just go over maybe a couple example sites and what it takes to do it. Just because, you know, we are starting to talk about the end of life of Drupal 7, and that's supposed to be sort of our big time when people are trying to figure out what to do with their sites. They come to Backdrop instead. So having a session that specifically looks at upgrading from Drupal 7 to Backdrop, I think, would be beneficial. And I'd be willing to help with that or propose it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I haven't done many upgrades though, so I'd be sort of learning myself. So I know you've done a couple of them, Jen.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, last year you had 1 day of training, right? 1 day of summits, and you did a session during the camp, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this year we have proposed 3 sessions on Backdrop for the normal bad camp session area. Nate and I took our like 1 hour talk and we split it into 2. So there's sort of 1 hour about philosophy and 1 hour that's a demo. And I think it works better in that format. I'm not sure both of those sessions will be accepted. And then there's another session that Nate recommended that was like 101 usability improvements in Backdrop CMS, which he would need to write if it were accepted. We could also put anyone else who's interested in that topic in that session too.
Sorry, what was the topic? I missed the...
What?
What was the last topic? I
101 usability improvements in Backdrop CMS.
Oh, that's a lot of usability improvements.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a catchy title. We don't actually.
We'll see if we can actually come up with 101.
We've got another release between now and then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so I don't know, session selection for bad camping for another 2 weeks or a week from yesterday, something like that. So I don't know what's going to get accepted. I don't know if they're going to want more than 1 Backdrop talk at bad camp. I don't know what other sessions they're going to get that might be more exciting or less exciting. But I would say we shouldn't count on getting more than 1. Like there might be, and that would be great. But if not, like we'll have 1. We'll probably have 1. And then our summit should sort of count on the fact that we are going to have a session we can drive people to. But what I don't want to have happen is have people like show up at the summit like curious to be like, I really want to dig into Backdrop and find out if it's for me. And then we'll be like, oh, sorry, you need to go to the session, and drive them away. But I do think that we could do like, we're going to give this little thing now. If you have any questions, stick around, chat with people, like make it like more casual for them. And then say like, by the way, we're going to have some heavy discussions over here about like how to handle contribution or whatever. And like, as long as they know, like we can kind of set that up ahead of time that we can avoid the disappointment. So I don't know how, like we can put that on the node right on the homepage. It's like, this is our actual schedule and this is what we're going to do. And then at least there's no shock when they get there. Yeah. So yeah, I think we have good ideas. I added to the session node upgrading from Drupal 7. I think you're right, Mike, especially with all of the talk right now about end of life. That is going to be more of a concern for people than before. I think it would be good to get people who made the decision to use Backdrop and upgrade from Drupal 7 there to talk about it. I think last year or the year before we had Brian there and he chose to upgrade from Drupal 6. I have a couple of other people who've chosen to upgrade from Drupal 7 this year. I can reach out to them and see if they can speak to it a little bit. Even though I've done a lot of upgrades, I feel like it comes across better from like the site owner than it does from me. Like people are going to hear me talk enough about Backdrop. If we could get someone else with like real experience, that would be more valuable.
I think if we can't if we can't adequately express that why people should upgrade from Drupal 7 to the Backdrop instead of Drupal 8, like yeah, we can get some people to say, oh yeah, it works for my business or something like that. But like, you know, I think that we need also to be able to make the argument ourselves for it.
Yeah, I just think it's more compelling coming from someone who's like, this actually saved me, rather than being like, it should save you.
I mean, it's a conference. I was thinking more like the nuts and bolts of like, hey, take your database, throw it in this, like, you know, load Backdrop, run the updates. Oh, look at these types of things need to be updated in your custom modules. Just the whole just like, you know, step by
that
step.
is, I think, a higher level of developer than we're after, though, too.
Well, I mean, it's a developer conference. Like, we're after Drupal people also to, like, yeah, I mean, yeah, I was just imagining for people who would actually do the upgrading of a site.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should work on a survey that we can send to our people ahead of time. And if we get a bunch of developers, then that's totally what we should do. And if we get a bunch of people that are like, I have a website, I'm thinking about Backdrop, we can do the same talk, but in a less technical way. So rather than having like a live demo of an update, we could be like, here's a bullet list of things that you should look at to decide whether you're ready to upgrade or not. That might be easier for non-developers to stomach. But I think like the same content is like how to update is valid regardless of how we frame it.
Is it helpful to have people other than you and Nate submit backdrop sessions in terms of the likelihood of getting accepted?
Yeah, I think everyone who wants to submit one should. And I'm happy.
I'll submit the one on upgrading from Drupal 7. Okay,
that would be great.
Nice.
Because I'm going to be at the session selection meeting for Badcamp. I don't know whether I'm going to be selecting sessions or not, but I'm happy to say like, hey, if you guys want to choose other people to present on Backdrop, we are more than happy to back out. So I'll be at least a voice letting them know they can choose whatever they need to. It doesn't have to be ours.
Okay.
Silly question, folks. Are we done with talking about the Badcamp?
Yeah, unless there are other thoughts.
I was just going to ask, like, have we created a Drupal 7 module that basically evaluates how easily a site could be upgraded to Backdrop? So it'd be installed on the Drupal 7 site, and then it'll like look at all the contrib modules and actually give them a rundown of what is available and what might not be.
I don't think we have that module yet. I think there is a Drupal 7 module we could port.
Okay.
I think it's called like upgrade status. I have it on one of my sites because I keep using it for Drupal 8.
Okay. Anyway, it might be something that would also be a good thing to show off at a upgrading from 7 to Backdrop thing. If we were to come up with something that does that.
We do have Coder Upgrade, which does a lot of the upgrading for us, which is pretty good.
What is it?
Coder Upgrade. It does all the like blind find replace stuff pretty quickly. So it's a good starting point.
Which is part of Coder module.
Yeah.
Okay. Step 1, propose a talk on software. Step 2, write the software. It's a good way of getting new software written.
All right, let's see. I think we're out of time. One thing, I don't know if anyone has the agenda open. I tried to itemize all of the teams under the infrastructure bullet list item. There's probably other ones that I'm missing. Feel free to add them in there. I'm going to try and use this as my template for getting these onto the website today. I'll leave it unpublished and post a link in Gitter so I can get some feedback on it before it goes up.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's call it a meeting then. Thank you, everybody, for joining again today. And thank you, guys, everybody out there watching on the internet. See you guys online.
Bye.